You know that feeling when you're just looking at this mountain of information, maybe articles, notes, just stuff everywhere, and you
Uh-huh.
just want someone to cut through it, find the really interesting bits?
Yeah, get to the heart of it.
Well, that's exactly what we're doing today on the deep dive. And you've given us a really fascinating set of sources, exhibition lists, articles, quotes.
All focused on 1 year, right? Bob Camblin in 1976.
Exactly.
Yeah.
1976. It looks like a pretty packed year, so I'm excited to unpack it with you.
It seems like a great way to approach it. Just
Yeah.
taking 1 year, seeing what it tells us about, his whole journey as an artist.
Right, right.
And these sources, they give us different views, the public stuff, like exhibitions, but also more personal things. Divorce, a big trip.
Yeah, it feels like we're sort of excavating this specific moment to understand the bigger picture of his work and, well, his life.
Hmm.
So our mission today, walk through 1976 with Bob Camblin. We want to uncover shifts in his art, his thinking, the themes he was working with.
And the connections he was making, or maybe breaking.
Exactly. We'll look at that busy exhibition schedule, the big personal stuff, that trip to Venice, which sounds formative.
And how it all might connect to his style, his unique way of looking at things.
Okay, let's dive in.
Where should we start? The exhibition seemed like a good place.
Agreed. The first thing that just jumps out is the number. The list shows, 12 shows he was part of in 76?
12.
Ah.
That's a lot. It says something about where he was in his career, doesn't it?
It really does.
Mhm.
Suggests he was very active, very engaged, not hiding away in the studio.
No, definitely out there.
January alone, he's made in Houston at the Louisiana Gallery.
Right, with other Houston artists.
Mhm.
John O'Neill, Pat Colville, Earl Staley.
Yeah.
Quite a group.
Yeah, James Boynton, Hannah Stewart, Ben Waitina, Joel McGlasson, Latane Temple, and the Houston Chronicle had a line about his drawings.
Oh, yeah. What do they say?
Called them bizarre as ever.
Oh, okay.
Said they combined real and not so real to create demanding and somewhat esoteric works.
Demanding and esoteric. That's telling, isn't it? Suggests his work wasn't maybe easy viewing, needed some thought.
Definitely hints at that depth. And even within that Houston scene, maybe he stood out a bit.
Seems likely. And then still in January, he's also in a show at Covo de Ong, gallery artists.
Right, and this is where it gets really interesting, the company he's keeping there.
Who else was in it?
The article mentions Jose Luis Cuevas, Rufino Tamayo, Pedro Friedeberg.
Wow, okay. Those are major international names.
Exactly, that feels like a step up. Recognition maybe beyond just Houston.
For sure. Being shown alongside figures like that, it positions him differently. Could have been a real boost or maybe even added some pressure.
Good point. Then we move into March. He has a solo show, this time at Baker University in Kansas. Bob Camblin, watercolors and prints.
Kansas. Was there a connection?
Yeah, the notes say he was a former Kansas City area artist and actually studied with a Baker professor, Tom Russell.
Oh, okay. So a bit of a homecoming, maybe.
Seems like it. It mentions he even held workshops there for people who were interested.
That adds another layer, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Not just showing work, but teaching, engaging with that community again.
And watercolor seems key in 76. He was also in Contemporary Images in Watercolor.
Oh, right. That traveling show.
Exactly. It was at the Akron Art Institute in March, April, and then the Indianapolis Institute of Art from March all the way to August.
And they even list a specific piece, don't they? Trotline forgery.
They do. Trotline forgery. Even the title sounds Camblin-esque. Playful, maybe a bit mysterious.
It fits that bizarre as ever description, perhaps.
Right.
But being in those shows, focusing on contemporary watercolor, it really highlights his work in that medium.
Then April comes, and another show at Covo de Ong. This one's with Bill Steffi.
Origin of the Birds. I remember seeing that title.
Yes. And the reviews for this one are really descriptive. Mimi Crossley in the Houston Post, she had some interesting things to say.
Like what?
She talked about his watercolors having the feel of Victorian equate etchings.
Oh, interesting. So like delicate lines, tonal washes.
Yeah, she mentions brown colors, light gray lines, and these images of boats, flowers, clouds, birds, figures kind of disappearing into rocks and leaves.
Disappearing figures.
Ephemeral. And she compared him to Beatrix Potter and Arthur Rackham.
Wow. Potter and Rackham. That paints quite a picture. Suggests something delicate, maybe fairy tale-like, but maybe with that Rackham edge. A bit darker.
Could be. It points to that mix of nature and imagination.
And then Charlotte Moser also reviewed it, right?
Yes, in Art News and the Houston Chronicle.
Yeah.
She picked up on different things, too.
Like
The small scale, the intricate details, how he used words in the drawings and titles.
words, okay. That's a recurring theme.
Yeah. And his focus on nature, but seeing it as a source of earthy mystical wisdom, she called it.
Earthy mystical wisdom. I like that. But didn't she also note a change?
She did. She mentioned a shift away from his earlier, maybe lighter, watery pastels towards something moodier, more medieval.
Medieval.
Yeah.
How so?
Deeper colors, deep browns, blacks, greens. She even talked about a vicious psychology underlying some of it.
Vicious psychology.
Yeah.
That's intense, especially compared to Beatrix Potter.
Right. It's quite a contrast. She mentioned specific works, too, like an ink pond called Origin of the Birds,
Okay, the title piece.
a still life with a fish, frog, rat, and bird,
An unusual combination.
and a drawing called They Only Mate This Way Once.
Those titles and themes do sound moodier, maybe more complex.
And this is happening around April, which we know is also when his divorce from Bonnie was finalized.
Well, it's hard not to wonder if there's a connection there, a major personal upheaval like that. It often finds its way into an artist's work, consciously or not.
That shift to darker tones, that vicious psychology, maybe it reflects some of that turmoil.
It's certainly possible. That blend of the whimsical or natural with something darker or more unsettling. It feels very human, actually.
It does. Moving on through the year, his work was also included in a big show at the Modern Art Museum of Fort Worth.
The 75th anniversary retrospective.
That's the one, June to October. Being in that kind of show, a museum retrospective, that feels like another marker of his standing.
Definitely. It means the museum considers his work part of that important historical context for Texas art, part of the permanent collection story.
In July, back at Covo de Young for the Box Show.
Right, the source mentioned a photo of his watercolor in a box.
Yeah, by Davy Folkman. And Roberta Smith, writing in Art in America, linked Camblin to William T. Wiley.
Oh, the Wiley-esque tradition.
Yes, describing it as landscapes teeming with dots, dashes, words, and animals.
Okay, Wiley's known for that playful, intricate mix of text and image, often quite witty. That comparison makes sense with the other descriptions we've heard.
It does. And the box idea itself, maybe containing these little intricate worlds.
Could be. Adds another layer, maybe intimacy or focus.
We also see mentions of undated shows at LSU and Baton Rouge and the Louisiana Gallery again, so the activity level stays high.
Keeps reinforcing those regional connections, too.
Then there's a really strange one in November. 7 American artists in Kuwait City.
Kuwait? What happened there?
The notes just say it was closed by military officers, no explanation given.
Wow. That's abrupt and mysterious.
Yeah.
Makes you wonder what was going on.
Absolutely. Just a blank space there.
And then one more watercolor show to round out the year.
Yep, contemporary images in watercolor again, this time at the University of Rochester's gallery in October-November.
So 12 shows confirmed. It's just a whirlwind.
It really paints a picture of an artist fully engaged, pushing his work out into lots of different places.
Local galleries, university settings, museum shows, even that international attempt.
It's diverse. But like we said, 1976 wasn't just about the exhibitions. There were big shifts happening personally and professionally, too.
Starting with a divorce in April, finalized with Bonnie.
That's huge, obviously. We speculated it might connect to the mood shift in his work.
It often does. Times like that can force a lot of introspection, reevaluation of everything, really.
And then in June, another big decision. He asks Brooke Alexander Inc. in New York to return his unsold work.
Right. Citing a difference in vision.
That's a bold move, parting ways with a New York dealer. What do you make of that?
It suggests he had a really strong sense of his own path. Maybe he felt the gallery wasn't getting it or wasn't presenting it right.
Prioritizing his artistic integrity over maybe the New York market exposure?
Could be. The notes say Alexander was gracious about it, which is interesting too. Suggests it wasn't necessarily acrimonious, just a divergence.
An assertion of independence, perhaps. It lines up with something he apparently said back in '68. The artist today is the only free agent. He is not committed except so much as he desires it.
Okay. So that independent streak was there early on. Makes the Brooke Alexander decision fit.
Then in July, a lighter note perhaps, he was apparently really fascinated by the bicentennial celebrations.
Catching the ships from TV.
Yeah, it's in a sketchbook. Just a little detail showing him observing the world around him, finding visual interest even in public events.
The artist's eye, always working.
And then, this is really remarkable how he funded his trip to Venice.
The subscriptions. Right, that's brilliant.
Totally. He got Betty Moody to help, offered subscriptions for art he would make in Italy, and sold 20 of them.
That shows incredible resourcefulness. And also a lot of faith from his collectors,
Mm.
buying sight-unseen work based on his future travels.
It really speaks to the relationship he must have had with them. Direct
A
engagement.
very entrepreneurial spirit there, too.
Okay, and 1976 is also when these different personas start appearing.
Oh, right. This is fascinating. Mr. Peanut?
Mr. Peanut, Santa Claus, Lindy Claire, Anonymous, Box Company.
And Anonymous Bosch.
Yeah.
With the Jachin deliberately left out of Bosch.
Yes, and he apparently noted that his own presence, Camblin, was the missing C.
That's quite conceptual. What do you think was going on there? Playing with identity?
Seems like it. Maybe commenting on how artists get branded, or just exploring different creative angles without being tied down.
It feels very playful, but also maybe a bit subversive. Deconstructing the idea of the single serious artist persona.
And we also noted that in the fall, his ex-wife Bonnie remarried Bruno Leon, another personal marker in that complex year.
Right. Adds another layer to the emotional backdrop of everything else happening.
So all this leads up to the big trip, Venice. August to December. 5 months. That's a significant amount of time.
A real immersion. And his sketchbooks from then sound amazing.
They do. He writes about the Festi dell'Ocio del
The
Vero.
launching of the glass birds.
Yeah, every 10 years, supposedly bringing prosperity to the Sestier d'Orso Duro district.
What a detail to pick up on. That mix of tradition, fragility, hope. It sounds very Camblin.
Doesn't it? It connects to another quote attributed to him, maybe from a different time, but it fits. Fortunately, some things remain forever, or another 10 years, perhaps?
Yes, that resonates perfectly. That sense of time, cycles, permanence versus impermanence.
He also had this observation about Venice itself, a spatial Venturi effect.
How did you describe that?
Like the buildings are just props, backdrops for the real drama happening above, below, through the spaces.
Wow. Seeing the city as a stage.
Exactly. And he thought his paintings inspired by this would be expressionistic in subject, but impressionistic in color and composition.
So capturing the feeling, the emotion, but using light and color in that fluid, impressionistic way. That makes sense for Venice.
And then he adds, Venice is seen instead of acted, and yet we all participate.
That's a deep thought. Like the city itself has this performative quality, and just by being there, you're part of the show.
How do you think that perspective might feed back into his art?
Well, it moves away from a single viewpoint, doesn't it?
Right.
More about atmosphere, multiple things happening at once, maybe less structured narratives.
That fits perfectly with another quote from his Venice sketchbook.
Let me guess. About vanishing point.
Exactly. In Venice, nothing goes to one vanishing point. This is not Renaissance Italy.
Nailed it.
He says, it wanders, it breaks, it changes a straight line. An unbroken line is unseen and unheard of here.
That's such a beautiful way to put it. Captures the organic, almost chaotic structure of Venice. No rigid perspective grids there.
It feels like the city's visual language really resonated with where his art might have been heading away from simple representation towards something more layered, maybe fragmented.
Absolutely. Embracing the wandering, the breaking line. It feels like a key insight.
And then there's that quote from October 14th. But what about Picasso and Duchamp?
Oh, yeah. Picasso opened a door and Duchamp stood in it.
The rest of us had to crawl through the window and wait.
It's a bit bleak, maybe,
Hmm.
but also realistic about following those huge figures in our history.
A sense of maybe needing to find a different way in, a less direct path, coming to terms with that legacy.
Perhaps.
Yeah.
And we know he also popped over to London for a week during this time.
Right, adding another layer of experience to that European immersion.
And then he comes back to Houston in December. 5 months away.
You have to imagine he came back changed, full of new ideas, new ways of seeing.
Definitely. That kind of extended time away, especially somewhere as visually and culturally rich as Venice, it almost has to leave a mark.
And those other quotes sprinkled through the sources, they seem to fit this period too.
Like the one about looking into things.
Yeah. Look into the atom, you get what you need. Look into magic, and you get what you need.
Seeking understanding in different realms, science, the mystical. It fits his earthy mystical wisdom vibe.
And balancing and being for and against. That feels relevant to a year with so much change, maybe finding equilibrium amidst it all.
Or just acknowledging the contradictions, and that idea of stepping off the train of thought.
Feels very much like an artist exploring, not wanting to be locked into one track.
And even the way he signed things that year.
All those different names.
Bob, Anonymous Bosch, Robin Goodfellow.
K. Sage, Anonymous Boxco.
It really underscores that theme of playing with identity, not being pinned down.
So when we look back at 1976 through these sources, incredibly dense, isn't it?
Absolutely. Intense activity with the shows, major personal changes, this pivotal trip, the shifting style, the exploration of identity.
It really shows how looking closely at just one year can reveal so much about an artist's trajectory.
It highlights that constant interplay, doesn't it? Between life events, professional choices, travel, internal thoughts, and what ends up on the canvas or paper. 76 feels like a real turning point for Camblin.
It really does. It makes you think, about that connection between inner life and outer circumstances for any creative person.
And the courage it takes sometimes to make those shifts, like leaving a dealer or funding a trip in an unconventional way.
Definitely. Perhaps thinking about Camblin's 1976 encourages us all to consider how specific periods, even in our own lives, can hold so much meaning when we look closely.
A focused look can definitely illuminate the bigger picture. Maybe listeners will be curious to explore other years in Camblin's life now, or look up some of those artists he showed with.
That would be great. Well, thank you again for sharing all these fascinating sources with us. We always look forward to the next deep dive.